Welcome to the Choice Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Nastasha Mckeon, founder and CEO of Choice Juicery, author of Plant Food is Medicine, and naturally a health, wellness, and mindfulness enthusiast. I believe that happiness is a choice, and I built my company upon this ethos. This show is a platform where we will discuss all things health, wellness, and mindfulness in hopes of inspiring you further on your journey. We will be sharing inspiring stories, health, wellness, and mindfulness hacks, as well as anything else pertaining to living your best choice life. My hope is that you may hear something on every episode of this podcast that will genuinely be of value in your life. Welcome back to the Choice Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Nastasha Mckeon, founder and CEO of Choice Juicery and author of Plant Food is Medicine. Of course, this episode, as well as every other episode, is sponsored by Choice. So if you want to support the show, which I hope you do, you can do so by visiting us online at choicejuicery.com and shopping our online store where we are shipping tons of amazing products all throughout the nation. And if you're lucky enough to live in Southern California, you can visit us at any of our 7 locations between Orange County and San Diego. We're all over the place with a couple locations in Carlsbad. We're in Encinitas, Solana Beach, Del Sur near Forest Ranch, Little Italy, San Clemente. We're all over the place. So find a location near you by logging on to choicejuicery.com. And I hope to see you in the shops. Thanks for listening. Today's episode, we are meeting with Garin and Yesi, which are friends of mine that I met through the house builds that I do down in Mexico. Those of you who know me know that a couple times a year I go down to Mexico and build homes in the migrant camps. And I met Yesi and Garin on a house build. I've actually done a couple of house builds with them now, but they are just an incredible couple, very inspiring. They founded a company called Gynergy, and I'm excited to get them on here to talk a little bit more about what exactly Gynergy is and what they do. But before we dive into that, I just want to share a little bit about their backgrounds. Garin, with very humble beginnings, was a self-made millionaire by the age of 24 in the real estate industry. He suffered a severe motorcycle accident where he really changed the way that he looked at life and success. He really had to rediscover himself after this motorcycle accident, ultimately leading him to start a company called Medcare Farms, which was a cannabis company. And he had over 100 employees, grew that to a very successful company, carried it through COVID and all the craziness of a very fast changing industry, as you can imagine, in the cannabis industry, with all the laws and regulations and things that have changed over the years. While I don't think that company necessarily had the ending he had hoped for, he learned some pretty invaluable lessons in the process of growing that company. And he learned, I think, through all of that, that success doesn't really matter if your health is not in order, and if your family life is not in order, and you don't have the connection and all the things that I think really matter in life. I think he discovered after running those 2 successful companies, having his motorcycle accident, that none of that really matters if you don't have, your health and you don't have connection in your life. And so ultimately that led him to co-founding Gynergy with Yesi, who also had some pretty humble beginnings, born in Mexico. One of 9 siblings, was one of the first to graduate with a degree in engineering in her family. And she became a success in her own right, working with companies such as Goldman Sachs and some other big name companies, and always with service in her heart. She's been doing house builds in Ensenada, sponsoring children down there to go to school, amongst many other ways that she gives back. I think she defines success by the amount of lives that you touch. And I love that. Very near and dear to my heart, their mission and their passion for life and giving back. They recently launched a program called Date Zero. I was at their launch party with Choice, dishing up some good juice, some protein bites. But yeah, so we're going to get them on here today. We're going to talk about what it means to be a power couple, because I would say that they are just that, what they're doing with Gynergy, and yeah, just all kinds of things. What does being a successful couple look like, and what is the vision for Gynergy, and what are they doing, and what can we learn from them as we get to hang out with this power couple? So we're going to dive right in, as we always do. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I do. Yesi and Garin. Yay. I'm so excited to have you guys on the podcast today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
Thank you for
having
having
us.
us. We're excited to be here with you.
Grateful to be here.
Yay. I think you're the second couple that I've had on the podcast. And it's always so interesting, right? Like as we're doing like an interview, ask a question, it's like, who's going to answer this one? So we'll see how we navigate this. But I'm really excited to have you both
here. That'll be
here.
a good example of our dynamic. You learn a lot about us by that.
I'm excited to see this play out. Okay. So I already introduced you guys to the audience and shared how we met, which was through a house build, which is so cool.
Mm.
And before we dive in any further, I just have to tell you, we just got back from another house build. And Cora and I, my daughter, and you guys remember Cora, of course.
Cora's
Yeah,
amazing.
she's the best. Super sweet.
Okay, so on the way down, she was like, Mom, is the big guy going to be here this time? I was like, the big guy? Who are you talking about? She's like, the big guy that I like. And I was like, are you talking about Garin? She's like, yes, Garin. Yeah, the Gaines. Yes. So I thought that was so cute. And also she was devastated when she found out you guys weren't going to be there. So the next, we had to go on one with you guys again soon.
Well, please.
Yeah,
we have one coming up actually in April. So we'd love for you guys to join us. Yes.
Is that open? Like, is it open enroll? Because I thought that you guys had one coming up that was specific to your guys' program, but is anyone able to join that one?
Well, no, the commitment is to go through Date Zero, right? So Date Zero is the introduction, but we are launching the next. We just sold out and closed the first Date Zero program that we're doing with Gynergy, but the second one's opening up in like 3 weeks. So we'll release a date soon. We would love for you to be a part of it. It would be amazing.
All right. I'm going to have to check it out. Well, we're going to have to dive into exactly what that entails. But before we go there, going back to how we met. So we met at a house build and it was kind of like, I want to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was the infancy of your relationship. I think you guys had recently started dating. And I remember hearing the story and I thought it was adorable. And I wanted you guys to share it. It was like something along the lines of you're on this date. Yesi's telling Garin about this, house build she has coming up. She goes to the bathroom. She comes back and he signed up. Am I telling the story correctly?
Yes, that's actually pretty accurate. And that was actually,
tell me your version. It really, it was such a sweet story. So obviously it stuck with me, but I want to hear it from you. I want the audience to hear it from you.
Yeah. So that was actually on our very first date ever. Garin and I went out to dinner at Javier's in La Jolla. And at that time, I had just registered to do a house build the following month. And it so happened that actually the reason I decided to go on a date with Garin was because I saw that he was volunteering at an orphanage in one of his Instagram pictures. So I saw that we had, the value of service in common. So that's why I'm like, okay, I'll give this a chance. I'll see how it goes. So I decided to go on a date with him. And on the first date, I told him about the house build. I shared the details just so he could take a look at it. And then I went to the bathroom like you mentioned. And when I came out, Garin had already signed up to the house build. So he secured the second date.
That's what I like to say.
Smart move. Smart man. I love that. And I love that you touched on the values part. Like I mentioned a minute ago, I had another couple on here before, and it was Jarek Robbins, which is a son of Tony Robbins and his wife. And they have a relationship that I admire. And anytime I meet someone that has a relationship I admire, I'd love to chat with them and kind of hear their story. But one of the things that they said to me were, you really need to date someone who has like shared values, but you can't just ask somebody like, what are your values? Because if someone tells you what their values are, you have to say, okay, let me see your calendar. Like, because people can say they value service, but are they actually committed to doing service? They can say that they value their family, but is there time in their calendar scheduled for their family? They can say they value their health and wellness, but are they making time to go to the gym? So I love that because just in the very first part of your relationship, you saw the picture on the profile, which is actually what attracted you to him at the orphanage, right?
And a little bit of backstory about that, and it really ties into exactly what you're saying right now is before, I went through a breakup, and after that breakup, there was this crossroad that I went through, and I was invited 2 different places for this weekend, and newly single, so my boy's calling me, and first I was invited to do this to volunteer at this orphanage down in Mexico. And I had never done that before. And I was like, this service has always been something that's been, important to me, and giving back, coaching, whatever I can do. But I've never actually dove in, never knew how to do something like that. So my friend invited me and I'm like, yeah, let's do that. But then 2 days later, I get a call from my buddy, a good friend of mine. And he calls me. He's like, Garin, I got you the suite at the one hotel down in Scottsdale. It's all paid for. We're going to party, have a great time. It's a pool party. It's like
The
summertime.
temptation.
And
Oh.
I'm like, man, I feel like this
So
is like this
enticing.
huge weight. There's this huge decision as
Yeah.
far as like a crossroad in my life and where it takes me, depending on the decision I made. And so I just sit with it for just a little bit. And I was like, you know what? What feels right. And I felt called to it. And I just knew in this moment it was going to be this big thing, was to go down and volunteer at the orphanage down in Mexico. And what I found when I went down there was what was so apparent to me is like, you go down and you just give your energy to the kids, and it's such an impact that it makes. But also the people that were down there with me all had this like beautiful type of energy. And I remember thinking to myself, like, one of the things that's important to me in my next relationship is somebody that's about something bigger than themselves. Because the women that were down there, their energy was so loving, they were caring, and it was just different. And I'm like, this is in complete alignment for what I want in my future, in my life. And so I went back home and I did this exercise, and it's part of our journal on day 0, but it was in this other journal I had, and it just asked like where you are, how you envision your life being in that category relationship, like what that outcome looks like and why. And one of my main parts was, finding somebody that is about something bigger than themselves. That's about serving a purpose that, is in alignment with giving and in alignment with me. And they understand the value that I bring, and they understand the value that they bring in a relationship. And that I was going to position my life to attract somebody that had that type of value system. So it wasn't
beautiful.
like this person had to be this or that. It was,
Right.
I need to be this person, or I develop into this person and desire that, so that I attract that person that's in alignment with my values. And then when we went on the date and she told me that, and just her energy was so amazing. And I know I'm dominating the conversation right now, but her energy was so amazing, and I loved it so much. And I'm just like, wow, there's something about her. And then when she told me that, and after I had done that exercise, I'm like, there's not even a question. To me, it was like, okay, I want to put my energy here. I want to put my focus here.
That's amazing. Okay, so I love you touched on a couple of things that I want to like drop in on a little bit. One was that saying comes to mind, if you want something different, you've got to do something different. And so here you were faced with this choice, like the suite in Scottsdale and the party and the pool and like all the things which may have been like a norm for you at that time, I'm assuming here, or this new experience, which can be scary, right? It's new, it's something different. I don't know any of these people. I'm going down to this orphanage. I don't know what this is going to look like. It's not familiar. It's stepping outside of that comfort zone. And in saying yes to that and honoring like your heart's calling, you figured out what was important to you, and, got yourself aligned with a new value, which who knew that ultimately that was going to attract your future partner, like your future wife, who knew that you were going to have a picture taken at that orphanage that was going to be one of, because I will admit, like when you're online dating, which I do, the whole Bumble, Hinge, all those things, for women, I think the numbers are really skewed in women's favor. I think there are a lot more like solid options for women than there are for men. I don't know. I'm just guessing, but it seems like, I mean, if you're a decently normal woman, decently looking woman, every girl that I talk to is like, oh my God, they get inundated with matches. And so, or inundated with messages and likes and these things. And so as a girl, you kind of have to get like really, really picky, so you don't have like this outrageous inbox. And Yesi, I'm sure you can attest to this because you are a beautiful powerhouse woman. So I'm sure you have like thousands of likes on there.
Back in the day when I was in online dating, I did have a lot of messages, but Gary and I actually met organically at the gym.
No
way.
It
wasn't online dating. I had stopped online dating for probably a year before I met Garen.
Okay.
Just because I just,
that's amazing.
I was really I desired to meet someone organically.
Okay. So when you say you saw his picture at the orphanage, was that just like social media?
It was social media. So I was definitely doing my due diligence on social media before going on dates.
I love that. Good girl. Good. Okay. So I'm just making the assumption, but online dating, but same. Like, we go through and we have to get really particular. Like, okay, no, he's a Sagittarius. No, he, he's right-handed or left. You have to get so, critical, I guess. So whether it's online dating or whether it's, again, sussing out a potential partner through their stalking their Instagram before the
Yeah.
first date. You know, we do these things to kind of like go through that filter because there are
Filter
so
them out,
many.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got
So,
really good at filtering them out. I would like look at
right?
their Instagram page and I would be like, yes, no, like
Exactly. And so look at that. Like you go to his Instagram and you see this picture of him in service, right? Doing something that aligned with your core value, which already he was like, okay, this is a yes. I'm gonna go on this date. I want to explore this person. So who knew that when Garin made that choice to not go party in Scottsdale, that was gonna be one of those defining moments, you know?
Best decision of my life.
Oh,
Best decision of my
I love
life.
that.
Yeah,
I
this right
love
here. I
that.
wake up every day. I feel so grateful. Yeah, I'm
Aw,
like,
I
man,
love it. I love
I
it. Well,
like, yeah.
I see that, you know, as an outsider looking in from the moment you guys, because we went on a house build together. I think it was like January, and then we went on another one in July. So I got to see the progression of the relationship over, you know, the few months, and it was just so beautiful to see, you know. And I think that that can happen. And you guys tell me, you guys are more experts on this than I am, but like when you have those aligned values, it can be so much easier, right, than trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, you know, which I think we've all done. We can all admit we've all done that. But when you stop doing that and you start really looking for like the round peg to go in the right spot, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I feel like when you're in alignment with your partner and you have shared values and also a similar view of what it means to live a good life. So there's not just like attraction and shared
Mm,
values, but there's also compatibility of the way you want to live your lives.
mm,
It makes it so much easier. And I feel like for Garen and I, we had not, you know, we had the attraction, we had the shared values, but we were also compatible in the way that the way we wanted to live our lives was very much aligned. We both
mm,
love to like give back, be of service. We're very much about health and fitness. We love to live a very healthy lifestyle. We don't really like to go out too much or drink too much.
yeah.
So like the way we live our lives is like so in alignment, and it's something really special that I always desire, but I had never really had that level of alignment in any previous relationship.
I
And I'm a
love
big
that.
proponent about attracting. So whenever you go out and you're chasing, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you're not gonna get the outcome that you want. Whenever, even like in business or you know any type of relationship, when you're out there and you're always trying to reach for it, reach for it, reach
Mm-hmm.
for it, and you have like this almost like fear of like not having,
Mm-hmm.
then you're not able to show up in your authentic way, and it's going to put you
Mm-hmm.
in like almost this defensive state of being that's more
Mm-hmm.
closed off. And what I found is when you're really open and you're vulnerable, I always say, you know, masculinity is confident vulnerability. And when you can
Mm-hmm.
show up authentic to who you are, even on a first date, on the first message, on any
Mm-hmm.
type of communication, and you find out very quickly, do I like this person or attract this person? Are we aligned?
Mm-hmm.
Unless, instead of, you know, let me play, you know, a game or hard to get or whatever for
Mm-hmm.
the first 5 days, and then let me open up. And
Yeah.
then when that person reacts to me different, I'm wondering, well, why now I'm you know being vulnerable with them, and now they don't respect that, or they don't
Mm.
aren't aligned with that. Well, that's because you just weren't you for the past 5 days.
Totally.
Like they're dating somebody that's not even you, right? So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's always about attracting through that vulnerability, because I'd rather know right away
Mm-hmm.
if that person's in alignment with me, even in any type of relationship, than
Yeah.
walk down a pathway farther pretending to be something or somebody or whatever else that's not in alignment. So I
I
found
love
that to
that.
be
That's
really
a very good
powerful.
point. You guys posted something recently about which I think kind of relates to this. It's like something along the lines of like don't try to find the one, like become the one. Like back to what you were saying with like going on that trip to that orphanage and deciding that was a value of yours. It's like, okay, that doesn't mean I'm going to go on these service trips to go find a partner. I'm
Right.
going on the service trips because I want to become this person. I want to become what I want to attract. I meet so many girls that are like, oh, I want to be with somebody who's like
Mm-hmm.
successful and intelligent and he reads and he travels. And I'm like, okay, are you all of those things? And they're like,
Right.
well, no. I'm like, okay, well, why would he want to be with you then? Like, shouldn't you want to become those things? Like, how about you work on becoming successful? You work on so many women are like, I want a guy who like takes his fitness seriously and his health seriously. I'm like, are you doing that? Like, you know, it's like you got to kind of become the thing that you're looking to attract, and then naturally back to manifesting. Like, it's so much easier to manifest what you're looking for when you're focused on becoming that which you're looking
Right.
for. And then that it's like attracts like. It's so easy from that place, and not looking at it from I'm trying to fill some void or need inside of me by looking externally. Let me just fill my cup up and become that. and then I love myself, and then I attract people like me, right?
I couldn't agree with you more. And that's a big premise of why we built Gynergy and Date Zero, because the starts at Date Zero, and Date Zero was inspired from me and her were intentional about our relationship from the beginning. And we did this. There's this book called 8 Dates by John Gottman. Really great book. You could be in the first part of your relationship or you could be married, and this book would be helpful to anybody.
Yeah,
and really,
Garin actually asked me to be his girlfriend on the first day from that book, and he proposed to me on the 8th day from that book.
No way.
Yeah.
yeah.
So that book has been like a big part of our love story.
I got to read that book. I love the Gottmans.
Oh yeah,
I haven't done any of the programs or anything, but they talk about this study that they do with couples where they put them in a room and they bring up like a hot topic. I was just talking about this on the podcast with a relationship coach that I had on recently. And in that study, they basically bring up that hot topic. And then within 5 minutes, I think it is, they can tell within like 97% accuracy if that couple is going to be together in 5 years based on if there's like contempt and disrespect in their disagreement. Isn't that wild? So, okay. So back to this. It's called 8 Dates.
So it's called 8 Dates. And what it does is it gives you structure through each of the 8 dates to have conversations that may have never had or took you a lot longer. And what it does is it puts things in perspective. So it helps you understand the really the way somebody looks at certain things. So for example, an easy one would be money, right? Like, how did somebody have a relationship with money? And then it prompts you questions on, well, why does their relationship look like that? And it could go back, most of it goes back to their childhood, right? And so maybe they grew up with a lack of, and so they were always in this place of need, and security is really have high importance. So saving is something that's really important to them. And then that may come in conflict with the other person that is more of a risk taker and, spends because they live, and maybe they had a death in their family at a young age. And they understand that, hey, you could save all your life, but that doesn't mean that you're going to enjoy life.
Right.
And so that quality of those moments are most important to them. Well, what it does is it gives you a structure for you to really find out and come from a place of more of understanding.
Yeah, and every chapter is like a different topic. So it starts with like trust and commitment, then it goes into conflict resolution, sex and intimacy, work and money, family, growth, spirituality, all the way to dreams. And
Question.
every day has
Sorry. Had you read the book before you guys went on that date, or just Garin had read the book?
No, I didn't read the book before that either.
Neither of you did.
So we read this book together. It was recommended to us by Garin had a Tony Robbins coach at the time who recommended a book for us to read together as a couple.
Got it.
So we would actually read the chapter together out loud before the date.
Before you went on the first date.
So you want to do it.
Not the very first date.
Okay. I'm catching up here. I'm like, okay, so the date in the program. Got it. Okay.
Right.
I was like, wait, he has to be his girlfriend on the first date? Okay, this is making more sense. So just to clarify to the audience, the first date of the book in the 8 dates in the book. Got it. Okay.
Clarification.
And so what's crazy is I didn't even know that we weren't like boyfriend, girlfriend until that book, right? Because I'm like, we had a conversation earlier and I'm like, hey, I'm not going to see other people. Like, how would you feel like if you saw me with another? Because I didn't want to continue dating other people or see me dating somebody else on a date and then be like, oh, it's over, right? Because she's very principled.
Yeah, so we established we were exclusive. But for me, we're not official boyfriend and girlfriend until I'm asked, do you want to be my girlfriend? Like, I'm more traditional when it comes to that.
I didn't understand that.
Yeah. And one of the first questions from the book, from the first date in the book, it was like, what does commitment mean to you? And one of the things that I brought up is like, well, if I'm going to be your girlfriend, I expect, to be asked. So I had to tie it. And I told him, like, I don't consider us boyfriend and girlfriend yet. Like, we're exclusive, but another level of commitment for me is, taking it to the next level of boyfriend and girlfriend. She's like, wait, what?
Wait, we're not already there?
I thought we were there.
Yeah, I had no idea.
I think men and women differ in that way, because I had a dating experience recently where I'd been on a few dates with this person, and, he let me know he wasn't seeing anyone else because like Garin, he didn't want me to like, see him with somebody else or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I'm like comfortable with that, like seeing where this goes, and just dating you exclusively. And then like a few days later, he was calling me his girlfriend, and I was like, what? This guy's calling me his girlfriend. Like, I was freaking out. I was like, I'm not your, and so I had to tell him, like, to me, that means something different, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that is important to define, because I do think men and women maybe see that differently.
So one takeaway from this right here, you may
Yeah.
be having a girlfriend, you don't even know. She don't even know she's your girlfriend right now. So
Exactly.
make sure
You should
go
ask
out
her,
there
confirm.
and ask and have that conversation.
That's a key,
So
having that conversation, the
yeah.
clarity.
Yes.
And that's what the book was great. I wouldn't read it by myself. It's more of a, you do it together, you know, and it just, it brings you through. And then on the 8th date, and it wasn't, you know, our 8th date together. It was the 8 dates that we took on the book.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, I think that's important, because
I was like, wow, everyone should read this book. You're going to have a husband by date 8.
Hey, I know what
Amazon,
I want.
one click.
Yeah,
And it took a year to go through the whole book. We intentionally spread it out so we would have time in between the dates, because these were like deep conversations.
Right. Wow.
So we had our 8th date after a year in Santorini in Greece, and that's when he proposed.
Yeah, in Santorini. Beautiful. You can look at her Instagram or mine.
I've seen it.
It was the most magical proposal.
I love that so much for you guys. How beautiful. I love that you guys knew to be intentional with the book and to space it out, like, so you guys could savor that, knowing where that ultimately would lead. That's really cool.
And this really brings us back full circle. So both of us, before we met, we're like, okay, 8 dates. This had such a profound impact on us. But really, like, what's the first thing before you start into this 8-date program or 8-date process? And that's that date with yourself. And so we're like, date 0. And that really to us is like, we can go and we can, you know, develop a relationship with another person. But if we're not good here, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, like, how can we show up for our partner in the way that we desire to, or that's going to attract that back in the way that we want.
And like the reason why Garin and I were so like attracted to each other and so aligned is because we both did work individually before we met. So that's kind of like the date 0 work.
I love that. Can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah, of course.
So there's 2 kind of camps in this subject. You know, there's the school of thought that you need to do all the work and be healed and be whole and be complete before you go into a relationship in order to have a healthy relationship. And then there's another school of thought on the other side of the camp that says you can do so much work on your own, but you have to be in a relationship to heal certain parts of yourself. And so you have to be, you know, open to dating, even if you're not completely healed and perfect, and working through things that will come up with a safe partner who can help you navigate through some of the difficult things that maybe you still have yet to work through. What side of the camp are you guys on with that? I'm curious.
Do you want to take that first or me?
Yeah, I can take that. Okay. I'm more in like the second school of that. So I think it's definitely important to, you know, do some work on yourself as far as defining what your values are, what your non-negotiables are, the things you stand for. What does it mean to live a good life? But as far as healing goes, I feel like healing is a lifelong journey. And like you mentioned, with a safe partner, you're going to be able to like work on healing in the relationship. So that I think there's like, it's kind of like a combination, but I do think that with a safe partner, it will make the healing process easier. You'll be able to like, you know, be yourself, be more authentic, and that will in turn help you heal more. And that's one of like the really special things about being with Garin, because there's parts of me that I didn't realize needed to heal until we were together. And like just having that safe space to be fully and authentically myself has allowed me to like heal those parts of me and to be able to talk about some things that I didn't feel safe talking about before.
I love that. Would you mind, and is it, I mean, if it's okay with you, would you mind elaborating a little bit on that? Like for our listeners, what does that look like? What is something that could come up, you know, as somebody who'd done the work, knew what her values were, knew what her non-negotiables were, and then she enters the dating world, she meets this partner who she's deemed safe to work through some of the stuff with. What are some of those things that came up for you that you had to work through in the relationship?
Yeah. One of the things that came up for me is specifically when it came to like living. So this is my second time living with a partner. But the first partner that I lived with, it only lasted a few months. So when living with someone, I realized I had a lot of triggers when it came to like work in the house, like division of labor in the house. And I realized there was a lot of things that were triggered because the way I grew up with my parents, a very traditional Mexican household where my mom was expected to do all the work, all like the cleaning, the dishes, the laundry. And I realized I was triggered when there were little things where like I felt like like Garin will leave the key somewhere else or wouldn't pick up after himself. That I felt almost like I felt almost like it was like a trigger of
Mm,
reliving like the way my mom, maybe the way I interpret my mom feeling in those moments where
yeah.
I didn't love that. So I
Mm,
realized there were parts of me that I'm like, oh, why does this bother me so much? And I knew it wasn't, Garen was like maybe not putting the keys in the drawer,
yeah.
but I was felt so triggered. I'm like, why does this bother me so much? So there were things
Mm,
that I like, that's an example for me that came up early on in the relationship where I'm like, ooh, like I need to like work through this still. There's parts of me that I'm like, I'm in, the way my mom and dad had a relationship that I'm like, it's like the things Garen does bothers me, but not because of something he's doing, but it's
yeah.
because of the way I was raised. So
An old belief system or something. So
yeah.
in that situation, for example, how did you navigate working through that? Was that something that because he's a safe partner, you were able to talk to him about what you were feeling? You guys were able to work through it together?
Yes, yeah. Well, like the first couple of times that happened, I was since I was a little more triggered, I was a little maybe a little more upset. But I was able to like take time, take my space,
Mm,
and then bring it up in a calm way and be like, hey, I'm realizing that this is coming up and this is bothering me, and then, like I was able to identify the reason why is like the way that I grew up. So I was able to explain it to Garen, and
mm-hmm.
that's kind of like the dynamic that my parents had, and that's something that every now and then it's still a little bit triggering, but it's
Yeah.
something that we're constantly working through.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for the authenticity and
Yeah, of
sharing that because I
course.
like when we can like give practical, realistic
Yeah,
things. Sometimes I think it's easy to glorify people, especially a power couple like you. It's easy to look and be like, oh, they're perfect. They never have any problems. And I don't think that that's healthy, right? I think it's healthy to be like, hey, every couple is going to have challenges to navigate. And like what we can look up to and admire in a couple is how they navigate those challenges
yeah,
and problems. So I love that you guys are open and authentic in that way.
yeah. And Garen was also like very open to like hearing me out and understanding where I was coming from instead of being like, oh, you're like being crazy or like
Yeah.
unreasonable. Like
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
helpful. Never call a woman crazy for
no,
those boys
I,
listening right now.
I think that is one really important point. Especially like it's easy just to say, "Oh, they're crazy," and that be, what we use is like our
Yeah.
our reasoning or excuse to behave or
Mhm.
react a certain type of way.
Yeah.
One thing that I've found has been really helpful is really coming from a place of empathy or
Mhm.
understanding, where like double click down. Okay, if she's
Mm,
upset about something, instead of taking it personal, like why am I, she's upset. Now I'm going to react in
mhm,
a maybe agitated way. Is that going to help the situation or is it going to
mm-mm.
hurt? And understanding what exactly I want the outcome to be is, I value her peace or happiness and I want her to feel safe and that she can communicate. And so coming from that place of taking a moment to not be okay, she's attacking me, to say, hey, something's
Mm,
happening with her right now that maybe she's a little bit more emotional or she's
mhm.
upset about something, and let me really listen and take
I
that
love
moment
that.
to hear what she's saying and where
Mhm,
she's coming from. A lot of times just being a mirror and a lot of not
mhm,
trying to solve everything for her or whatever else. It's
mhm.
just here's a mirror, what's going on, reflect back, repeat it, and just have her know that I understand where she's coming from.
Yeah.
And when we do that and somebody feels like they're heard, they don't have to continue to feel like they need to be heard and
Yeah.
repeat. And so if you're
Mhm,
with a partner and you feel like, oh, they're always just repeating, tell me the same thing, and I'm just trying to help them. I just, I know a solution. And I'm just, well, a lot of times it's maybe they don't feel like you're hearing them. And
mhm.
and just
Mhm.
take a moment to repeat what they said back to them so that they know that you're understanding the emotion.
Totally.
And then
Totally. I
another
love
big
that.
one,
Double click down. I'm
double
gonna
click.
mental
Yeah,
note
double click.
that.
Open another folder.
Double click
Go
on
down
this.
another
What's
folder.
going on here?
There's a lot of folders to be undone here. And when you go through and you understand if somebody's in alignment with you and you
Mm,
guys is, shared purpose, it makes it a lot easier to do that. So when you do that self work, it's a
mhm.
lot better. And not, like you said, we have issues at times. We put a lot of stress on ourselves to
Yeah.
be, you know, every day we put, have a certain intention, and,
Mhm.
we put, like, I know sometimes I put a lot of pressure on her, and, that can be wearing, because I'm very, at times can be demanding, especially when it's like my purpose. I feel like here we're
Mhm.
put on this earth to make an impact and to help people, and we
Mhm.
every day matters and every minute matters, an hour matters, and I'm like, I have this whole vision that I see how we're doing that, and when we're not on the pathway there's things that happen that hold it up, I cannot be at my best, right? And so but that's counterproductive, because when I react a certain way, she's not going to take that in a positive way that's going to create better results. So if I want the outcome, why am I going to react a certain way? And
I love that. I love that. Okay, I want to get back to date zero. And before I do that, I have a question around, because one of the things I think that, the theme of this conversation is kind of based on like becoming that person and dating yourself and getting yourself in alignment, and then and then knowing what your non-negotiables are, as Yesi was talking about earlier. I think one of the biggest struggles that many of us single people have, myself included, is this attachment to an outcome, which I think when we are attached to an outcome, and I'm curious to know like what your advice would be in these situations, and maybe date zero kind of covers some of this stuff, but you have this, you want a partnership, right? People that are listening to this or watching this even are looking at you guys thinking, wow, like that's what I want. This power couple, they're aligned, they have shared values, they're like just doing service, making the world a better place. These people are, I want that, so we have this, we have this attachment to this thing that we want. And then, I go on, a date. Let me just throw this random example out there. I go on a date and I'm like, okay, this guy, he says, he does yoga and he drinks green juice, and, he says he's in a family and all these things. Okay, great. Like, yes, we can work with this, never mind the fact that like, oh, like the first 3 times that I, talked to him on the phone, he was recovering from a hangover. Like, let me just ignore that because he says this and I'm so attached to this thing that I want. I'm going to just like ignore those red flags because I really want this thing. So how do you coach people on this or help people to navigate that, the zero tolerance thing, the non-negotiables, and walking away when it's a non-negotiable? Because I think that's the one thing that a lot of us are guilty of, and it prevents us from finding our right partner sooner, because we continue to entertain the wrong partner longer.
Do you mind if I start with that one?
Yeah, go ahead, baby.
I think that's so a great example of this, right, is we don't drink often, right? And so this year, going into this year, yes, he was like, you know what, I'm just not going to drink this year. And I was like, well, I mean, I don't drink often. It's not really an issue. Should I continue to just drink on a special occasion or whatever else? I'm like, you know what, if you don't want to drink this year because we don't show up as our best the next day, it has an impact on us, whatever else, I'm not going to drink any either. And we just both made that commitment, and it wasn't something that was difficult. We just, here's what we're going to do, and that's what we have stuck to. And that is what we're, doing this year. So what it did too is like we went down to Mexico, and it was her parents' birthday. Both her mom and dad, and she's from right by Tequila, Mexico.
I'm from Jalisco, where the tequila is.
And it's her parents' birthday, and drinking is big down there. And if we didn't make that commitment and took the decision off the table, basically is the main part, take the decision off the table and said, hey, we're drinking sometimes, or maybe we just don't drink. We absolutely would have drank a lot down in Mexico to celebrate her birthday with her family. It was just, but we already had made that decision. So we took the decision off the table. So we didn't have to say, hey, no, maybe we're drinking today, maybe we're not. And then it puts you in this like halfway in, halfway out situation. And her whole family respected that. It wasn't an issue. It never was. And we had a great time with everybody. We're able to be present. And it really was powerful. And why I say that is because if you take that same premise and you apply it to a relationship, as far as first date zero, understanding your core values, your creed, your mantra, what's important to you, and that's all part of this process, it makes it very clear what your non-negotiables are, what decisions you're taking off the table. So if you went through that and you identified it, and I know you're one of the most incredible human beings that I've met, and you have such a huge mission that's bigger than yourself, and your family is such a great representation of that as well. And like, even I was interacting with his name, John Paul or something. I can't remember his name exactly, but he was an employee. But I told him we're on a podcast with you.
Oh, Mark Anthony, maybe? Mark Anthony? Is it two first names? Mark Anthony.
Yeah, John Paul,
Mark Anthony. Same.
Yeah, great energy. And he's just like, Nastasha's amazing. But everybody I've ever talked to, because I always talk to him about you when I'm there, they all love you, and you know, you have this just great way about you, right? So, you know, if I'm you, it's like, okay, I understand that what the core values are for me. Now, if somebody called me and I was going to do something, or, you know, I had an obligation, but they weren't able to do it, or they weren't at their peak state because they were hungover, would I expect to attract, you know, that person that I want?
Yeah, but I think it's also not just defining your values, but taking a step further and clearly defining what the non-negotiables are. So there aren't gray areas. So it's
I love
taking that step. So if you clearly define non-negotiables, you know, when that happens, you're not gonna be like, oh, well, maybe he meant this, maybe he meant that. You're gonna be, no, like, that's a non-negotiable, and I'm gonna like stick to my commitment that is a non-negotiable for me.
Well,
That's why
Does
like the
that
giving example is
and,
so
and,
good.
and I would
does that
say,
happen
like,
in Date Zero? Sorry, but I'm just curious. Like, is that part of your process that you take people through in your Date Zero program, where you help them to define those non-negotiables?
yeah, absolutely.
I
Yeah, it's a
love
huge
that, because
part
I
of
think
it.
that's so freaking
Right.
necessary, because I think
And
people would even look to me and they'd say like, oh, she's got it all together. Like, you know, she makes great decisions with dating, I'm sure. But, you know, I have definitely been guilty of like being like, oh, this doesn't feel right. But God,
I
the
know.
chemistry's so great.
I
And,
know. Sometimes
you
it's
know,
like
everything else is
yellow
on the
or
list that is theirs. So let me just like, let's just
and it's
go a
like
little bit
I,
further. Maybe I can fix this. Maybe I can
I know.
change this. Maybe I can shave off the edges of this square peg, you know?
It's
And
like the
so
yellow or orange flags that you don't
totally,
quite know if
yes.
they're red flags yet. That is like, ooh,
Yeah.
I,
It does
I would
take
say this. I would say this is one way that I was, and I was just about to, is just, if you wouldn't show up that way in a relationship with somebody else, like, so be a mirror, right? So if
yeah.
you wouldn't be, you know, hungover and, you know, have those issues, or that energy not be right, would you expect somebody to date you, right? Like,
Right.
or would you be okay with that within yourself?
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm not okay with that in my actions being that way, so like if I'm not a man of my word and whatever it may be, right? And would I expect somebody else to be okay with it? Or would I date
Totally.
myself, basically? And so
Totally.
if you use that kind of as a gauge, if that makes sense, I think
It
that's
does.
a powerful way to go.
It makes a lot of sense. I was deep into a relationship like 2 years in when I realized that I had blown past all the red flags, and I found myself deep in this relationship
yeah,
after 2 years, and realizing how far off of like my path I had gotten by being in a relationship that was so out of alignment. The first thing that I did was, instead of like jumping out of the relationship, was just like to call myself back into alignment. This is God, coming up on 3 years.
yeah,
Because this July will be 3 years, I quit drinking in the relationship. I was never a drinker before, but the relationship brought that out in me, because everything was always a party with this person.
yeah,
And, you know, when you're in love with someone, or you think you're in love with someone, it's easy to kind of fall off your path. And so I'd fallen off my path inside of the relationship. And here I was like trying to like make him change, make him. And I was like, let me refocus on me, you know? And I did. Inside of the relationship, I got myself back. You know, I joined my yoga practice after years of being out of yoga. I quit drinking. I, you know, started doing the work, meditating every single day without exception. I just got myself into full alignment. And it's ironic, because I didn't even have to make the decision, like leave the relationship or not. The relationship fell apart because I was in alignment. It didn't work anymore, you know? And so I do think that's such an important piece that is so often overlooked. And I love that you guys created Date Zero, because I think people need that. They need to understand that, like, you need to figure out what those non-negotiables are, and you need to make sure that you are in alignment with that which you're wanting to call in. And I don't think you have to decide again. And if you're in a relationship that's not ideal to you, you don't have to be like, oh, should I leave? Should I go? Should I stay? Just focus on you, get yourself into alignment, and then everything else figures itself out, you know?
Well, I think one part too that you're gonna love is, like, we have different pathways too. So it's not just Day Zero. That's the entry, right? So you go through
Yeah.
Gynergy. Day Zero is that first initial, because that's a date within yourself. And it's kind of like you go down the hospital, what we talked about as a filter, right? So
Yeah.
people go through Day Zero, they're having tension about being in alignment with themselves, understanding, you know, their core value, all those things that we talked about, and much more. But then we're rolling out additional pathways, and one is a couples, one's business, one's you know, fitness, health and fitness. But then there's a singles blueprint. And so what we're going to do is, after you go through Day Zero, you get in alignment with that. And, you know, our tagline's like, tired of swiping right, you know? So
I love that.
you can actually stop wasting your
Exhausted.
time. Like, you know, thumbs hurting, you know, just
Yes.
tired of, you know, going on. We don't have time to waste. So this is basically a filter that, you know, if somebody is serious about themselves And then there'll be this, singles blueprint that we go through and just, walk through some different, key elements on how to attract your partner, but also we'll be connecting people through having like a retreat and some meetups and different things like that.
Unofficial
That's
matchmaking.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, I
So it's gonna be a
like
lot of fun.
that.
Yeah. That's going to be really powerful.
We need that. Definitely in San Diego. Oh my God, we need
The
that.
big one. Yeah.
And I was like, can we use AI somehow to create a better dating app to like filter through like come on, there's got to be
That's
some
Gynergy.
basic standards here.
That's what we're building. So
That's
like
amazing.
And we have so many other plans with wearable tech and AI and how that's all going to integrate together. But
I love that.
very simply, the human connection is one of the things that get lost anymore, and really understanding deeply the value of that within each other, because those relationships and the way that we can impact each other and make each other feel, that can't be just replaced, right?
Totally.
That is
I love
really
that.
what we're focused on. And it's just because like we hear it all the time, this is a need, this is a need, this is a need. So our mission is to fulfill that need.
I love that. You guys are totally doing it. That is so amazing. One other thing I want to say on that topic before we kind of segue off, I want to ask a couple more questions about dates here before we go. I think like one of the things with the non-negotiables and knowing what they are is also like the approaching it fiercely. And when you're not dating from a place of lack, which you were talking about earlier, Garin, it's like you're fearless in your approach. It's like, what are you looking for? What are your dating goals? Those things, like I would wait like 6 months before I'd even think about asking about that kind of stuff because I was so afraid of scaring that person off because of all the horrible dating books that are out on the market, right? That tell you like you got to play this game, you got to play that game, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I'd read them all. I always say this to my girlfriends now. I'm like, play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Right.
I like you learn the games, great. You won the prize. I mean, I have had people be like, oh my God, how did you land him? He was like a forever bachelor. He's like, oh my God, it's like I played a stupid game and I won a stupid prize and I was not happy with that stupid prize. Like at the end of the day, you're not going to be. And I think what you were talking about earlier with leading with vulnerability and authenticity, it's like, this is who I am. This is what I'm looking for. If that doesn't line up with you, it's like, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just we shouldn't continue this. And the sooner you say that, the better off you are. Because my friends are like, oh my God, I'd scare him off. I'm like, good. If having a conversation about what his goals in dating are scares him off, let him run, sweetie. Like, let him go. Yeah, totally.
You're off the wrong person. That's a blessing.
Day one, you just saved 6 months of heartache and headache and everything else. Right?
Oh my God.
So if it doesn't feel right, you're the only one that can take action for yourself.
100%.
Everybody's waiting for permission to take action, be able to live their life. You are the only one that can live your life and take action. So you make those decisions for you, what you feel is right. There's a lot of people in the world, right? So you don't have to be in a relationship or not in alignment just because that seems like what you have to do. That's the way to really live a miserable life. And you learn sometimes through experience. I had a lot of, difficult things that happened in a short period of time with, a lot of people dying in my family, managing 100 employees through COVID. And then had a death of my grandmother that was like my mom growing up. And then that prompted me to go through a divorce. And then she was my business partner. And then they never got along. So I thought, I'd be able to spend more time with my dad. My dad raised me by himself. And I wanted to show up for him in a different way. But literally like 3 months later, he died.
Wow.
And I just realized like tomorrow's not guaranteed. I've almost died a couple times, but it's like, if I don't find my purpose and live, to make sure my cup's filled up and I just keep giving when I have nothing left to give, like you're not going to be in a good place. And I got to a really dark place. And I got to a place when we were talking about living fearlessly that I just didn't even want to live anymore and literally almost ended my life. And I made a decision right then. It's like, I can end my life or I can just live fearless and take action. And when I'm put myself in a position where I'm living my purpose, and the next day I booked a trip down to Mexico and I went and bungee jumped. And when I bungee jumped, I just basically, my intention was let go of any pain, fear, resentment, anger that I was holding on to. And he went 3, 2, 1, and I literally leapt. And I had no fear when I did it. I was completely calm. And when I got to the bottom, it just like everything shifted for me. And so
Wow.
now it's like I'm unapologetically me. And, I've had some high highs in life, some low lows. A lot of people have really great relationships and care for me. And some people maybe like we've been through some not so great things together, and that's okay. Right. And
Yeah.
so, but what I'm not going to let happen is my past affect my present or my future. Right.
I
So
love that.
I'm going to evolve my life. I'm going to live within my purpose. I'm going to understand what those are. And I'm not going to let anything that's outside shift me from that. But I am very much in alignment with how I know my core values and my purpose to be in every day. And I'm good. If I die tomorrow, I'm good because I know I'm living in alignment with that. So.
That is so good. So much powerful stuff in everything that you said. I love the part where you're like, it's like almost living from a place of like, well, I've got nothing to lose. Like I was ready to die. Let me just go live fearlessly now then. Like, let me just go jump off this cliff with this, bungee and like let me just do it all the way. I mean, if I'm at that place anyways, may as well. And how freeing that feels because you're able to let go of all of that stuff, all that weight that we carry, and bringing up the past too. It's like so many of us live from our wounding of the past. I was watching this video the other day and the guy was like, have you ever been to the past? And the girl was like trying to say, he's like, no, but like, have right now, like, have you ever been to the past? Like the past isn't real. It's not a place you can go right now. All that's real is this present moment. That's all we have is this present moment. There is no past. You can't go back there, right? You can't visit it. No, you can't. Only in memory, but it's not real. It's gone. It's a vapor. But yet so many of us hold on to the past and make that our excuse for why we're living, and destroying our future while we're living in that, that hypothetical past or that not real past. And so I love that. It's like, can we let go of all that stuff? Because the past does not predict who you're going to be. And I think both of you are such good examples of that. Like myself, I grew up like with a very rough childhood. And we all have different stories. I shared a little bit of both of your stories in the intro. My background, I grew up in extreme poverty, around extreme violence. Like, I mean, the worst you can imagine in terms of my childhood. And like that, a lot of people will be born into those environments and they will believe that that's who they are. And I don't know if it's nature versus nurture, to be honest with you. I mean, it certainly wasn't nurture. Because I wasn't in the environment, right? But I came into this world into a really bad situation. And somehow I always believed I was greater than the environment I was born into. Like I just knew that. And if that's one message that I have for anybody listening to this podcast or that follows me in life, it's like, you are greater than what you were born into. Like you can be greater than any environment that you're currently in. You can be in a bad situation. You can be in poverty. You can be in pain. But if you can think greater than how you're currently feeling and how you're currently living, you can create greater. You can't create greater from a place of lack. You have to start to feel that you are greater and believe in that. Going back to the manifesting earlier. So I love that you were able to do that, in a dark place, like losing, two very close family members, losing a marriage, which is such a devastating loss, going through managing a business during COVID. Like that's absolute crazy. And I know, Yesi, going through, I think you were one of the first to graduate college in your family, becoming an engineer, like coming from, being born in Mexico, a sibling of 9, like you came to a country where you didn't even speak the language. You face so much. So I love when people get to see that, because oftentimes people can look at successful people. People look at me and they assume like, oh, my life has just been so easy and so perfect. It's like quite the contrary, actually. It's been a freaking really challenging ride. But like, and it's same with you guys, not knowing your stories and looking at you guys thinking like, oh, it's just so easy. And others, it's been so easy for them. So easy. It's like, no, you guys went through a lot of trials and tribulations and learned the lessons and, and grew from them. And I think that with everything in life, you can let things break you down or you can let things break you open and learn and grow from those experiences. And it seems like you guys did just that. And then here we are now. You are with the love of your life, building your dream business, changing the world, making impact, teaching people like me and everyone else, that looks up to you and admires you, that there's a better way to do things. So, okay, before I talk too much and we run out of time, I want to just talk a little bit more about exactly what Gynergy is. I know we've spoken a little bit about it so far, but like give people kind of like the spiel. How do they learn more about it? Who is it for? And what are they going to get out of it? And where do they go to learn more about it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So Gynergy, it's an umbrella brand that's all about, it's for anyone who's desires to live a life filled with more gratitude, more connection, more purpose, and to live in alignment with, first and foremost, themselves, but also with their relationships with the world around them. So with Gynergy, like we mentioned earlier, Date Zero is the entry point to Gynergy, but we're gonna have different programs related to health and fitness, singles, couples, and business. But the whole premise of Gynergy is to inspire others to live a life, a life of purpose and meaning and connection.
Yeah,
And
one of them
Gynergy
big
is
too
a
is like it's all about like that the pathway to your highest self.
yeah.
That's the way I look
That
at
is
it.
that is Date Zero.
Beautiful.
And Gynergy really started as Garin and Yesi energy. And like the Gynergy effect is really that amplified magnetic energy that you have when you're in alignment with yourself, first and foremost, but also when you're in alignment with your partner, it's almost like an amplified magnetic energy that other people can feel and are attracted to. And that's the Gynergy effect is what we
Yeah.
call it.
Everybody kept
I
coming
love
up
it.
to us like, "Oh, you guys have this magnetic energy. Like, I just want to be around you guys." And it would just happen like all the time. And so we're like, "Well, what is that? How do we quantify that?" And so we're like, "It's synergy." And then we're like, "No, Gynergy, like Garin, Yesi, energy, and then that compounding effect that happens on it." And we're so grateful to, it's like when you're vibrating at that frequency, you attract people like you, and we get opportunities to come share with your audience. And one thing that I'd like to share too is if you are listening to this and you go on gynergy.com, that's Gynergy, and you go on there to start the Day Zero program, there's 3 different pathways. You can get the book by itself and do self-guided, but there's QR codes where we give you insight on here, and it's just this really, it's really
Really
lot of
comprehensive.
comprehensive things that we just put in place in our life that we put down into this whole process. That's really incredible. But if you can do the self-guided, or you can do where the community part is so powerful. So 80%, there's a study that 80% more likely to follow through and finish on something. How many times have we picked up a journal like this that would have changed our life and then put it back down because we got distracted, life got in the way?
Totally.
So when you do it with the community, which a bunch of like-minded people, great people, and first they'll be strangers. By the end of the 6 weeks, because this is 45 days, it's like you have a new family, kind of like when we do the house build. And then there's a last one that includes the house build, the retreat, going down there, staying down there, transportation, food, all that stuff. So 3 different pathways. And then if you're listening to this, we'll give you a code, and we can make that code, but let's put it as Nastasha 10 for the code.
I like
and
that
I'll also
code.
put it choice 10 and Nastasha 10. We'll do both of them.
Perfect.
So if you're listening to this, you can put that in, you get 10% off.
Yeah, if
whatever program you
Nastasha 10
choose,
doesn't work, it's probably because you spelled it Natasha. It's Nastasha.
That's exactly.
I get that so often.
so funny. Oh, I could tell. Yeah, I was like, no, I got to make sure I get the name
You
right.
did it. You did it. You got it right. But no matter how many times you say it, people they'll just hear it's like it's programmed, because Nastasha is like a made up name. My dad made that name up actually, and it's just such a rare name. People are so programmed to hear Natasha. So I can't tell you how many times I get emails. People are like, I emailed you, or they text me, and I'm like, what email did you send it to? Did you send it to NASTASHA? And they're like,
I'll say a quick story on that real quick. So Nastasha was amazing, and Choice came out, and they were part of our Gynergy pre-launch or Day Zero pre-launch, and we're so grateful. Like everybody loved you guys too, and the stuff that you guys brought out and the interactions.
We're so grateful.
Such great feedback. But I remember there's an email that went out, and it was from somebody that was helping us, incredible person was helping her, but she put Natasha, and
every
I'll
day,
tell you
all
what,
day.
it wasn't when you're asking Nastasha to do something and provide and contribute, let's not get her name wrong, because that's not. But I know that, like, because I can't remember people's name. I'm always like, hey, I'm Garin. They're like Aaron, Gavin, Garland, Darren, everything but Garin. So and then I forget their name by the time I'm done getting.
That's
it.
how my team usually. That they filter people out at the stores, because a lot of people come and be like, "Oh, I'm friends with Natasha," and they're like, "Oh, really?
Oh, like, are you
You
really
mean
friends
Nastasha?"
now? Like, are you
yeah,
really friends?
yeah, totally, yes.
Luckily,
it's like honestly 50 times a day. Oh, you
you're
guys
breaking
are.
up. Sorry.
That's okay.
Oh.
That's okay.
So what I was saying is
Awesome.
I'm lucky because I just go, it's like Garin, like guarantee, but without the T, you know?
Oh, so good. Totally.
Yesi.
Easy.
I just go by
Easy.
Yesi now because Yesenia was too hard for people to remember.
I know, right? Yes.
Unique name for unique people.
Of course. Of course. Well, I love it. Thanks for sharing all the stuff about Date Zero. I hope everybody that's listening goes and checks that out. I know I will be as well. One of the things that you mentioned before I let you guys go is just the community aspect. And, you know, if that's something that you're thinking about joining Date Zero as you're listening to this and getting curious, any avenue where there's community involved, I think is just so powerful. Coming back from this last house build that I was on, I was driving back with friends of mine that I always drive down with. And I was like, oh, God, this is the best build yet. And my friend David was like, you say that every time, Nastasha. And I was like, well, it's true. You know, it's true. Every time I feel it's like the best one ever. When I really sat with it, like, what is it that makes it so amazing? And for me, I think it's being in service, of course, is like to something bigger than yourself. You're not worried about like what happened yesterday. You're not thinking about what's going to happen in the future. You're so present in the moment. Both with being in service, but also being in community. And I think that's the best part about what you guys are offering, that you're including an offering that has community involvement, because I think that it's so necessary. When you're in community, there's no desire to, I've noticed this both in, you know, going on retreats and, you know, going on house builds and things like that. When I'm there, there's no desire. I mean, I haven't had a drink in a lot of years now, but back in the day when I would drink, it's like whenever I'm like, I don't know, like you have those experiences where you're like, oh, like I could use a glass of wine right now. I could use a drink right now, like to, you know, whatever, to like elevate the moment or whatever. I'm escaping from something. And when I'm in community, I never had that urge ever to have a drink, because it's just like I'm so filled in community if I'm in community with the right people. And certainly when you're in service or you're in community to learn and grow, which is what you guys are offering both, actually, right? So I love that you're offering that. This has been such a fun conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Definitely have to do some follow-ups with you guys, because this is way too much fun. I feel like we could talk forever.
One thing before we go, because I like putting people on the spot.
Yes.
Do you have your phone with you?
I do. Yes.
All right, pull up your calendar.
Okay.
What are the dates of that? What are the dates of the house build? April
26th through the 28th.
April 26th through the 28th.
Let's see.
It's a good picture too.
26th to the 28th. Okay. What am I doing?
You're putting in there the house build, and you're going to join us on this house build with us.
I love it. All right. I'm in.
Yes.
House build. You know, if I go, Cora will probably be there with me. Is it going to be kid friendly?
Oh, yes, definitely.
You can bring it.
They usually are, but I don't know with your specific group. But Cora would kill me if I went on a house build with you and didn't. Guy. I know. She would. She was basically in your arms the entire time. It was hilarious.
Oh, that's adorable.
Yeah. So not if, because you're committed now.
All right, I am. I'd say for this event. Okay.
Everybody heard it here.
It's in the calendar.
That was my whole goal today.
All right. I'm in. I love it. Thanks for putting me on the spot.
That's what I do.
It's what Garin does best.
It's so good.
So good. Well, we love you.
Thank you so much for having us.
I love you guys too. An absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for listening in. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could leave a review so we can reach more people. I might even share your review on future episodes. If you go to the link in the show notes, you can find and sign up for our newsletter so that you're notified when a new episode comes out. You can support this show by purchasing anything from the Choice Juicery online shop at choicejuicery.com. Or, of course, if you're lucky enough to live in San Diego, you can visit any of our 7 locations here in San Diego and Orange County. And please feel free to connect with me on social media at Nastasha Mckeon. That's NASTASHAMCKEON. Don't forget that extra S. Or you can connect with us at the Choice Juicery Instagram at Choice Juicery. Thanks again for listening in.